Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Revenue Growth Architects podcast. It's Chrissy and Charlie here. And today we're going to be going through go-to-market propaganda we're not falling for. There's like this trend going on right now. It's probably already done with as social media trends are, but on Instagram and TikTok and so forth, like propaganda you're not falling for. And I feel like it's much applicable to B2B because there's so much stuff out on LinkedIn or what people tout, as the best way to do something, or, all the clickbait, all of the things to try and get attention. But, being someone who's been in the space for 15 years, I think we know better. And there's a few of them we definitely think are wrong. So wanted to chat through that. I had actually done a post on this on LinkedIn, and it got a lot of engagement, and a lot of people agreed with what I said and offered up some other ones that I thought were pretty good. But so we're gonna go through those. So Charlie, are you ready? You can disagree with
I'm
mine
ready.
too, Charlie, but I don't think you do.
Maybe I'll just try to be devil's advocate. It made me start to think about, is there any propaganda that we've been putting out there? Who knows?
Probably.
Let us know if you think we have.
That's a good point. Okay, so the first one I feel like very applicable, and that's you need an ABM platform to actually execute your ABM strategy. This is something that I think somehow along the way, people, without even hearing about it socially, just decided was the thing to do. So it's like, oh, we need to do ABM. Okay, instead of developing a strategy, let's just go out and get a platform or a tool. And what we see is it just leads to no strategy, people wondering why they're not seeing results, trying to just pull a list of target accounts and maybe use it to send out some ads or display ads or anything targeted those accounts, and then call it a day. In my opinion, that isn't really ABM. And they wonder why they're not getting results. And there's usually kind of a lack of ownership around the tool and the strategy that goes into it. And we see that often. So I know, Charlie, you hear this a lot, especially when you start talking to new clients.
Yeah, I feel like maybe about 70% of the potential client calls I have when I'm speaking to clients that are interested in our services, it comes up that they have an ABM tool, and I'm not going to call them out by name, but everyone knows who the main players are. And more often than not, they'll say, oh, we've got this, we've had it for a couple of years, we're not really using it. Maybe we're using it for some of the ads, but we're not using it for anything else, or the sales team doesn't trust the intent data. So if anything, I think a lot of companies are learning this the hard way, where they went tech first before having a strategy, and then the tech turned into shelfware, and then the strategy didn't just magically materialize after they bought the tech either. So they're still struggling with the ABM strategy, and they've got an expensive piece of tech, which is 6 figures sometimes or more, and they're not feeling great about it. So definitely, I mean, we've talked about this before. You do not need a specific ABM tool to execute an ABM strategy, and you can apply a lot of this to a lot of other tech too. Strategy comes first, and then build the tools around that.
I think also the kind of point here is like you can do ABM without those tools. And especially now, there's a lot of different point solutions depending on what you're trying to do. And also maybe some of the things that they were trying to do in terms of like pulling in intent, and a lot of it based on third-party intent. And then companies try to just, go after accounts just based on that without also then like another strategy, say like maybe a signal-based strategy or anything like that. So I think times are changing. You figure out like what suite you need. And also, as we know, ABM to us is more of a personalized, like a very much targeted against that account kind of strategy. The rest is kind of just scalable outbound, I think, which is really good targeting. So that's another propaganda. But anyway, next one. So a Series A company is too small to hire go-to-market ops. We see this a lot.
This might not be so much like a LinkedIn propaganda, but maybe more CEO, whoever's pulling the purse strings in companies propaganda. They're like, oh, we don't need to invest in this, or they're maybe not explicitly saying that, but they're not investing as much as they need in it. And we've said this a million times before, but laying the foundation early is going to be a lot quicker. It's going to be a lot more inexpensive, and it's going to set you up for success further down the line than letting your company scale and you haven't built out, the tooling, the data, the strategy behind all of that, the team that's going to operate these systems and make sure you can take your product to market. If you do that too late, you're going to be paying for it when it comes to when you really need it. Like when you hire the CMO, you hire VP of marketing, they're looking for reporting, they're looking to execute, but no, they're going to spend the first 6 months of their role fixing the systems, fixing their data, and fixing all this crap before they could even get to what you've hired them to do. So I don't see many people saying on LinkedIn you shouldn't hire ops people at Series A or before, but it's actually what ends up happening a lot of times where they're underinvesting in that capacity and they end up paying for it.
Yeah. VCs also can sometimes lead CEOs astray and tell them not to hire that and just go for the demand gen folks. So just another tidbit. Okay.
And the demand gen person who's used HubSpot like 3 roles ago doesn't count as like a true ops person. I'm sorry. Like maybe when you're pre-Series A, you can have someone doing that, but as soon as you need to do anything sophisticated, you need a true ops person that's been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
You just do. It's too complicated.
Third one, AI can perform all the data analysis for you. Well, as we know, we talked about it a lot. I feel like this one's pretty simple. What you put into like the data that you use or that AI is going to try and do analysis on is much more important than actually having AI do the analysis. So can it do all the analysis for you? Not if you have bad data or your data isn't structured a way where it can do the analysis. But also, there's a lot of just intuitive things that I think the people actually doing the marketing can bring to the analysis to show, like, because as we know, like some of the data, there's just implicit things that you need to pull from looking at it, and that's not there. And AI doesn't do that kind of thinking. It's very, one way and what they can see in the data. So I just think like, yes, maybe you can, even if your data is good, use it as a starting point, but definitely not doing it all for you at this point.
Yeah. If you look at our last podcast, we talk about this in relation to the ChatGPT HubSpot integration. So I think a lot of that said there. And if anyone's telling you that they have an AI component to their analytics tool, this is going to give you all the answers, I think they're kind of overselling themselves right now. Doesn't mean that's not going to happen in the future, and we shouldn't be testing these tools, blah, blah, blah. I say this every podcast, but at the end of the day, I haven't seen any practical examples of AI just like spitting out the perfect answer to data analysis when it comes to like very complicated go-to-market data. Maybe it's more simple use case. It's still not quite there yet. So test it, don't completely trust it, and really focus on the foundation and the data quality first.
Yeah. Maybe when AI is doing the marketing, I could do the analysis on the marketing. Maybe. It knows what all the decisions made. Okay. Oh, this is good. There's no point in trying to get any kind of attribution data because all of it's wrong.
I like this one. But go ahead.
I feel like the simplest way is what we always talk about, where like all models are wrong, but some are useful. Is the way that we think about attribution data. But I think also if you're just like the buying process is so complex, and also it depends on the type of questions you're trying to answer, but you can't just run blind. That just doesn't make sense and it doesn't fly. And also directional data is good data that you can then pair with your noggin to make decisions. And what you don't see in the data is actually also just as important as what you can see when it comes to attribution. So that's why I think it's still a worthwhile thing to invest time in.
Yeah, I feel like LinkedIn's gone back and forth on this over the years, right? And I think just if you're a serious person in this space who's got a job at a company that actually is trying to grow, whether it has VC funding or not, but particularly if it does, and you're going around saying there's just no way we can track anything. It's all just crap, and attributions just completely made up. You're not gonna. I think that's going to limit you and the kind of the respect that you're going to get from the senior people at the company and the VCs and investors behind you, because they're looking for answers. They're looking for you to try and uncover insights in the data, make better decisions. And if you're just coming back and saying that's not possible, that's not going to fly. I mean, you can say it's hard, you can say it's complicated, you can say it's nuanced, and we're going to need multiple models to help try and do
Yeah.
this. But just saying that there's just no point in even trying and just throwing it all away is just kind of ridiculous, honestly. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's just trying to get likes.
That, and also just kind of just offset any responsibility you have and accountability to your marketing. There are some things that are really hard to report on, right? Like
Yes.
brand. And I agree, like you should still do brand activities. It's going to be hard to report on. There are things like kind of implied attribution, or just the how did you hear about us? Doing market analysis, interviewing buyers, getting your sales team. There's ways you can still do it. And that's why you've got to be, really understand the good and the bad with the different models, and the good and the bad and the ability to get reporting from the different types of activities. But when people go, it's a step way too far to just say there's just no point in even doing this, right? Unless you're just like a solopreneur or something, then yeah, fine.
Yeah. This one, this is one that people might disagree with me, but letting IT own your CRM is the best way to set governance and prevent tech debt. Um, I think we talked about this in a past episode too. So if you're a listener, I think a lot of these maybe we've touched on, but I think personally, like that, like, putting a team in terms of and trying to set governance is not always the answer. It's, if anything, it'll just slow things down. And then for the sake of the company, is that really what's going to set? Is like, do you want to have governance or do you want to actually get stuff done? And I think there needs to be a kind of a good mix between that. Do I think that IT can own CRM? Yeah, I do think that that could work. Do I feel like it's the only way, or that also it doesn't go wrong? No, it does go wrong. And I've seen it massively slow things down for go to market teams. So yeah, I think it's very much nuanced, and I think you actually need to just address like your current state of your company, and also what type of governance you're looking for, and also how did you get that tech debt to begin with? Because I think a lot of the time it's just like you went like no governance to then now like, oh, we need IT to save the day for us, and that's not really like how to do it. And you need to address the fact that you just never had any kind of rigor or governance to begin with. So just putting some in across the team might be more useful than just having a team own it.
Yeah, agreed. I think, was it 2 podcasts ago that we talked about this in a lot more detail? So if people want more thoughts on how to handle IT owning CRM, then check that one out. But I think the way you phrased it is right. It's not you're saying that you definitely can't have that happen, but if you're of the mindset that it is always the best way, then that's probably wrong. There's plenty of companies where IT doesn't own CRM and everything's fine, and they're moving as quickly as they need to with the right governance in place. So multiple ways.
I think the next one is slightly related too, but creating a RevOps team is the only way to create alignment across the operating teams. That's something that I definitely don't agree with. I feel like maybe people have come to that conclusion already, but it was RevOps was the thing for a long time. And that was your way where you can get your operating teams to be aligned and so forth. And I've seen companies and teams, or even been like, I've seen teams have a RevOps team and there'd be also a lack of alignment and people just not knowing who they should report into, if that person, cares about their career path, especially marketing ops versus like CS ops and sales ops, like having that same leader, but you have different stakeholders and customers that you're helping support, I think can be tricky. But just know like you can have those teams work separately, but still be aligned without a reporting structure, in my opinion. And I think that can work just as well. So
Yeah.
pretty self-explanatory, I think, but Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we've done a few podcasts on this one too. But again, the way you phrase it is right. Where you said it creating rebel team is the only way to create alignment. That's the issue that we have. It's like
Yeah.
it can work. We're not saying it never works, but it's not the only way that you can create alignment. And if
Yeah.
anything, sometimes it also isn't a surefire way to create alignment. You can
No.
still have issues with it. We see it's hard to keep people aligned, honestly, even on the same team.
Right. Yeah.
Especially in the
Yeah.
remote first company where lots of people aren't really speaking unless it's a dedicated call. There's a lot of priorities happening. There's a lot of kind of independent work, group work. There's like a lot of to keep everyone aligned on, and it's just really hard. So there's no silver bullet to it, whether you have a RevOps team or not. And that the promise of RevOps was that a lot of time when a lot of people were talking about it, it kind of was the silver bullet. Like, look how aligned we are. We've got a RevOps team, but take that with a pinch of salt.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Okay, this is a little bit really, I mean, this is like another way of looking at it, but also maybe contradictory to what we talked about. But you need a multi-touch attribution model to be successful in marketing.
On this one, were you
Yeah.
saying that you only need a multi-touch attribution model, or
Yes.
like the fact that you need it maybe plus other models, or like kind of what was the thinking behind this
I
one?
think people think like unless we have multi-touch attribution, there's like no way that we're going to
Right.
be able to do good marketing. And I think like for a certain size of team and you haven't stood up a lot of channels, think about what multi-touch attribution helps you get insight into. It's like when you have a lot of different channels and touch points against your opportunities. If you're just starting your marketing, there's a lot of insight that you can get into with maybe other forms of attribution without going and looking to setting up a multi-touch attribution model. Do I think you can outgrow that like very quickly? Yes. But I do think that we've almost like come to this point where like we need attribution to tell us like what good marketing to do. But then that also has minimized like people from starting new channels, uh, taking risks in their marketing, like you said, doing brand. And so there, it's kind of like that flip side too, where like you can make bets on marketing without seeing it also in the data. Like you want to try a new channel, or there's things that are good to do that you just likely may not see in that data. So you don't need multi-touch attribution one in general to figure out good marketing, especially if you haven't invested a lot of channels yet and you need to get that stood up. But then also if you do have it, you need to take it with a grain of salt. Like we said, it's not perfect, but also you need to take risks too. I think it's so sometimes marketers get into this self-perpetuating kind of like, I don't know, hamster wheel of like, we're going to do these channels and our data is going to tell us those channels are influencing pipeline. So let's just keep doing those channels and activities. But then they don't take then the risk to do new things. Or alternatively, they just like keep doing a lot of those things, but in new ways, and then don't really put like a program around it. I feel like this one's pretty
So I have
nuanced,
a
but
yeah, I think it is
yeah,
very because I could imagine the listener saying, "Didn't you just tell me in the one around there's no point in
yeah.
trying to get any kind of attribution data that you do need attribution data?" And now
I
you're
do
saying
think
you don't need attribution data. What's the
but you
nuance
don't
here?
need you don't need to be like only do what you see in the data is what I'm saying. And then also for companies that are starting, if you are like a seed investment company, you barely are doing marketing, there's a lot you like multi-touch attribution maybe will only tell you so much, or you might be disappointed when you look at the data just because there's not a lot of touch points that maybe are happening to trying to close those deals. So there could be a little bit of a time where you can wait to set up that model. Do I think that you need to wait? No, you can start setting up, and I think setting it from the beginning could be great. But I think that looking at like the smaller companies and very small companies, there's a lot less like because you're just starting out new channels. There's a lot less like insight that you can get where you could maybe just look at kind of more like simplified models, like looking at your funnel metrics, looking at what go to market motions are working, looking at your outbound signals and which ones are working. But then multi-touch can give you that insight too. So I think this is just more of like a this like there's this other side of it where people are like, you can't make smart decisions on marketing without looking at the data. But I do think in impulsively, like marketers will kind of know what's good to do, and you also need to make bets on new channels and marketing activities that you also just don't see in your data. So don't be like married to the
Yeah.
model. You can still do good marketing without your multi-touch attribution data telling you to do something.
Yeah, because in your first one, and there's no point in trying to get any kind of attribution data. The whole point there is that there is a point in getting some kind of attribution data. The nuance
Mhm.
is that it's not you're not saying you should get every single type of attribution
Yeah.
data and only make decisions on that, because you can be successful
Right.
without different types of attribution data it as well. Like so that's where this whole thing is like so nuanced with
Yeah.
reporting and data, because there's so many different types of models. They all give you answers to different questions. You got to use them at the right time in your journey as a company, but also within the right context for the decision that you're trying to make, right? Like we were just talking today about, you don't want to use, if you're saying, okay, like we sent these event leads to sales, or we got these hand raises or to sales, and we're looking at that, what we might call like life cycle or funnel data to go, okay, like are they converting into opportunities in pipeline? That is telling you something, but it's very different than what multi-touch attribution data is going to tell you. And like you've got to know when to use those different models. Like the first one, you're trying to understand like what are we sending to sales and how can we
Yeah.
optimize like what sales signals sales following up with. The second one is more about like what channels are we investing in? What are the different activities that we're doing as a marketing org to try and drive pipeline? And they're very like different questions, and they both have value. And you can be successful with like flavors of any of those. So
Mhm.
I the most frustrating part of all of this with reporting though is that it isn't easy. There isn't just like a do this one thing and you're going to be getting all the insight you need and it's going to be great. So if you really want to lean into this area, you have to like really lean into this area and really try and understand it and try and understand the different models, when to use them, how to use them, pros and cons of all of them, and try and educate your company on the best way to do that. But that's hard. And that's why there's so much debate constantly around marketing analytics and what this way is better than this way or this way is better than this way. Because I think a lot of it is coming from a misunderstanding of just how you should be using data in the first place. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I think the next one, I'm going to skip forward to one because I think it's almost slightly related. And I do think it's partially supporting kind of my last argument. But CMOs need exact and measurable data to prove their marketing is working. And that's kind of where I feel like we've gotten to a little bit, where I see a lot of CMOs or marketers make decisions on what marketing they're going to do just solely based on how they can report on it and if they can report on it and show that it's working. And that's like just killing their brand and killing their marketing, I think. And they're just making the wrong bets. And we really still need to focus on kind of like that customer experience and journey. And I think back to like, I don't know, before we started this podcast, I was, we were talking about the 90s, and I'm like, oh, I sometimes yearn to live during that time. But I also think part of that is because I think that we weren't so reliant, or people probably weren't so reliant on exact data to like make their bets. If you think about like big brands that like tried to make a splash, like they took big brand, bets on, say, like Nike or, McDonald's. There's very much a focus on like, how can we just make a great product and then, market it in the best way to drive sales. And I think right now what's happening is like, yes, maybe there's a focus on a great product, but it's also more like, how can we just like get in front of all these accounts as fast as we can? And how can we just capture those people's names and market to them as much as we can and send a ton of email in the easiest and fastest way possible, and then show to the team that we're doing all this activity. And I just think that, like we all know it's wrong, but it still continues to be done.
Yep. Yep. Definitely agree.
Yeah. Okay, so switching gears from from that, which is very nuanced like we talked about, but
Hmm.
one thing is I think this maybe isn't like propaganda, although there's a lot of this whole team like build in production or whatever, but you don't need to do a technical audit before solutioning or building a project for a map or CRM. Uh, and I think that it's maybe not so much propaganda, but maybe this like feeling that like I think a lot of teams have, or even contractors or agencies, maybe other agencies maybe have, where you can just like come in and do a project and without actually doing your due diligence on the technical auditing side. And just from knowing how, fragile people's systems and architecture are and just how everything intertwines with each other, I think it's like pretty clear. Like you literally cannot do that effectively without knowing what you're working with and what you're playing in. And doing a technical audit, I think, takes some time up front. But then doing anything after that or anything that you solution for that will be executed like flawlessly
Hmm.
if you actually do that upfront work.
I actually have a good analogy for this. So we were getting some work done on our house, some yard work on our backyard, and the the contractors were coming around and they were basically trying to lay the brick on top of some existing concrete and on the back patio. And they started just like drilling holes to be able to put in, some holders to like line up the string for the bricks. And what they didn't realize is that we have a slab foundation with tension cables running through it. And if you break one of those cables, the whole foundation of the house could fail. And luckily, I saw them doing this, and I kind of told them to stop because of what I knew. Um, but what they should have done really before doing that is like try and understand a bit more about the foundation if they can drill into it. Maybe look at the plans of the house, which we have available. Be able to understand a bit more about like the current architecture of the house before doing this type of work. But no, they just jump in and start just drilling away. And yeah, sometimes that's fine, and maybe there isn't a consequence. But sometimes when you come into an org, coming back to what we do in ops, and you just start building something, and you don't realize what else maybe is downstream from that, upstream from that, in another integrated system, and then you launch it, and then the whole shit breaks and something breaks. You've broken something by trying to fix something, and then you have to go around and fix the thing that you've broken, adding timeline to
Yeah.
the project. You've broken trust with other teams because you've broken maybe their thing. It's maybe going to, if you're an agency or contractor, and it's going to cost more because now you're doing that, and you probably didn't do the upfront technical work to understand what was upstream and downstream because you're trying to move too quickly. So I think it's just you don't need to go too overboard with this. It's not like you need to do like a full technical audit of every single thing imaginable every single time you do any small thing. But one of the key uh, parts of the job description for anyone coming in and doing a reasonably sized build that there's going to be an impact is to do that impact assessment, understand what and know based on experience what could break, what is usually downstream from these different processes or automation I'm building in this other tool. And that's why, back to our, Series A company is too small to hire, go to market us. This is why, like, all of these things, like a lot of what we always talk about is making sure you have the right people in place, because the right people in place are
Yeah.
going to understand this. They're going to know, okay, if we do this, this could break, right? Back to the contractor thing, the guys drilling probably didn't even know like what this type of foundation is. But like if there was maybe someone more experienced on site, they would have known and they would have seen it and they would have gone, okay, yeah, this looks like that type of foundation. We shouldn't do that. And it's the same thing with hiring the right people, getting the right people in the room on these projects, because they're going to anticipate what could be the issues and go look to see what could be damaged or broken by what they're building. So I think there's like a lot of messages in here. Have the
Mhm.
right people that are going to know what to look for, and get them to look for it before you do any deployment, because you don't want to be breaking these systems. They're fragile enough as it is.
Yeah, or like an added benefit. So we do one, especially if we say we're doing a funnel work and we're changing stages, which means we're changing lead and contact status. We go find all the places where that's being referenced. And when it comes down to deployment day, you know exactly what needs updating and you've already planned for it. And you have that kind of checklist already ready for you to knock down where like Charlie said, sometimes you just end up monitoring, just picking up loads of stuff and monitoring, and then you're just swatting flies at that point. So you just, you're saving the time up front. It's like a really good little investment to make up front. So yeah. Okay. Next one, AI related. So suit up. AI will make your team more efficient. General. But this is also for people who are not focusing on just how to make ops efficient in general. We just talked about this on the podcast, but I think there is some cases where AI probably can make you more like teams more efficient, but I think that what we talked about really is like, well, first, like, have you even just focused on making your ops more efficient in general? Because that's a great place to just find like efficiencies. And, there's things that companies are doing just like very inefficiently just due to process. And so adding on AI or figuring out AI to be more efficient is somewhat of like a loaded question or a loaded kind of comment because it's like, well, yes, you can. But also there's a lot of things that you can do just in general to the day-to-day workflow and workday for all of the projects you're doing. Yes, with AI to make it more efficient. And I think that's also just a general then place to start. But first focus on making your ops more efficient, just process wise, especially like campaigns and creating campaigns or a lot of campaign execution, I would say, would you say is like very inefficient for a lot of teams? Like that's where they really struggle.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's so many inefficiencies across
Yeah, in
so many
general,
things.
that one, yeah. Or
I
like
think the
SDR
podcast,
process is very
right,
inefficient a lot of the
totally.
time, and that
Yeah,
comes down to just like no one really owning it too,
yeah. I
and
mean,
no one
the
taking the
podcast we
initiative.
did on this a while back, I think my point was suddenly when you look at a pie chart of ways that you can make go to market more efficient, the whole circle is just AI right now. And the problem with
Mhm.
that is that, maybe there's a ton of it that is AI, that AI has introduced ways to be more efficient, but there's still a ton that is just the basics that people are
Yeah.
just getting completely wrong or haven't built for scale, haven't built it the right way. I think the example I gave was like a company that has hundreds of employees that didn't even have the sync between their CRM and the marketing automation platform turned on. So like they weren't even getting the right leads through. People sales weren't able to follow up, or they didn't have the right data, and they had all these inefficient processes. They didn't have any reporting. So there's so much inefficiency that just needs to be solved. And yes, have an AI strategy, lean into that heavily, but don't only do that. Have a whole plan around creating efficiency in the boring ways too. Because probably that's going to free up you to be able to then lean into these more exciting ways to drive efficiency with AI.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
if you ignore those, you're going to be still bogged down in like the why did this contact not get to sales? Why did why is this data on the contact wrong? Why are they not in a campaign? Why is it taking so long to send an email? Like, all of these just like inefficient things that if you're in Slack all day, it's like dealing with all of that. We're never going to have time to start leaning into the AI tools. So get all that stuff off your plate. There's plenty of ways that you can build your system to not have to have those problems day to day, and then you can free up your time to play with all the fun AI tools. So
Yeah. All right. Last one. And I do think this is propaganda that maybe like vendors have maybe got people to believe, but there's one set of reporting that is a silver bullet and answers all your questions on go-to-market performance. I think we've covered this kind of time. A lot of these are kind of covering the same thing, like when we talked about multi-touch attribution, where we're saying like you got to pick the reporting or the tool or the data to try and answer the question that you need. But I think a lot of the time that has so much, like you said, nuance to it. And when you're running, you have a team who's strapped or running, doing all these things, and you are trying to align them. Like, I think CMOs feel this pressure of like, but I don't know how to get my team to understand that nuance. So can we just have one set of reporting or something that we can then, get everyone to rally around? And then the problem is when they do try to get that, it's usually a very like uh credit based way of looking at things. Like maybe they use their funnel metrics, but then, or the original touch or the last touch or something on an opportunity, and then get everyone to look at that. But as we know, there's issues with that too. And that's the power of using attribution data. So I think that, you know, yes, if there's a tool doing something and they're doing great with reporting, it's a multi-touch attribution tool or something else. Like just know that yes, that's a great thing that you can use, but it's not the only thing that you can use. Because sometimes the narrative is a little bit like, get your team out of spreadsheets or get them away from doing XYZ and use this tool. And it's like, yeah, I use that tool, but also use that other type of analysis or data to answer this other question and so forth. And but shiny marketing stays away from nuance.
I mean, I think in general, the propaganda I try and never fall for it is just silver bullets existing in anything.
Oh yeah. Like people want that for
Everything's
diet, exercise. There's a reason why fad diets exist, but then there's a reason why they don't work. I think people just want
everyone
that
wants a
like
shortcut.
shortcut. Hmm. Yeah.
Unfortunately, they don't exist. And maybe AI turns into that shortcut one day. That would be great. But for now, I think the silver bullet hasn't. At least I've never found one. I'll keep looking.
Yeah. I think I got a lot of comments of people agreeing and saying their own. A lot of people agreed with the whole like um uh AI is going to take all of our jobs, which I'm like, well, is that? I don't know. I still, but a lot of people agreed. But then a lot of people agreed with that everything in marketing is measurable, like people saying that. And I think it's very clear, like, that's, hard to say. Like, there's a lot of things that aren't measurable that work really well. I thought one was interesting. Someone's like, you don't need to clean up your CRM. Uh, which I was like, people say this, but I think it's more. They said they followed up with like, add 1 million contacts to your CRM and you'll make a ton of money. And I was like, so I think that's more that like volume equals success. And that's actually something that I think also is that people need to strip away and be like okay with like doing less, but then doing it really well. And like not have to show activity, show database growth, show number of emails sent go up. Like I just feel like I don't know why that's like the goal. It just doesn't work. Anyway.
I like the one on intent data. I think that's intent data is we've always had a bit of a, I don't know. I was going to say love hate, but probably never particularly had a love relationship.
Well, first party intent I love.
Data. Well, of course, yeah. I think when people say intent data, they're talking about
third party,
right? So
yeah,
but yeah, some good comments in here.
Although someone commented go to market operations as propaganda. Guess they don't agree with us.
I feel attacked.
Maybe they're in the camp of go to market engineers.
Well, no, I think they're RevOps. Right.
Oh, they're RevOps. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Well,
both the two people that said it both have like RevOps in their whatever it's called on LinkedIn, the little like not subject line, but like the little headline.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I see that. Anyway, would love to hear if people have propaganda they're not falling for. But yeah, this is a fun episode. I feel like it kind of brings up a lot of the things that we just feel passionately about here at CS2. So hopefully it was a fun little listen. And yeah, we'll see you next time on the Revenue Growth Architects podcast. If you enjoy this episode, share it with a colleague or friend. I'll see you next time. Thanks.
Bye.